Mr. President, thank you for being with us.
Pleasure.
You have a country that is about as far as it could have been 16 years ago during the Civil War. You have prosperity. You've stamped out corruption in many cases. But there are still issues about how that gets done. There are critics who say it is not a free and open society in terms of politics and democracy.
Well, but here we need to, first of all, ask ourselves, who should be making the judgment? Is it just some individuals outside Rwanda or wherever they read books from, or is it the Rwandans? If you hear from the Rwandans, the majority of them will tell you they are very happy with the process of recovery, and given where they have been and where they are today, they are extremely happy. And they have been part and parcel of that process. So I don't think the critics really have good grounds on which to stand to make any criticism.
To the outside world, though, right or wrong, democracy is often used as a measure of progress. How would you characterize democracy in Rwanda today?
Democracy, like many other things in Rwanda, has seen very vast strides taken, just like economic transformation. And I have this argument that, in fact, it is not easy to have social and economic transformation without corresponding progress in governance, in democracy, and rights of people. Because at the same time, it is the same people that are part of this process that transforms their lives. So I don't like the whole idea, first of all, of these critics who really don't take time to study situations and understand the context and even understand the processes that they are talking about.
Let's talk a little bit about human rights. This is a country that's been so it's been so stricken with violence between ethnic groups. Are we any further toward harmony in Rwanda today?
Absolutely. I think it is even a wrong characterization, first of all, to keep referring to Rwanda as a nation just along the division of ethnic or tribal lines. It doesn't make sense. We are Rwandans, and that is what we were before colonization,
right,
and that saw divisions, and now that's where we are getting to again. So there is a rebirth of our country where Rwandans see themselves as Rwandans, and we've made tremendous progress in the last 16 years where Rwandans are taking on their responsibilities and building their future, the future they deserve to have.
So when you think about the growth, the economic growth in countries, we refer to it by GDP, gross domestic product, the broadest measure of all economic activity in a country. And if I tell you that there's a country that's going to have 10% GDP, most people will tell me the answer to that is China. Rwanda.
Yes.
Your economic growth is substantial.
Yes, we've seen average growth, or GDP growth, at 8% in the last 10 years. And this year we're going to register 10%.
All right. Off a small base, obviously, much smaller than China, but you had about $230 million in direct foreign investment last year. And I was speaking to somebody from the World Bank last night who studies Africa, works in Africa, and said that you've managed to deal with corruption in a way that is otherwise endemic in Africa. What have you done? How do you deal with petty corruption?
Well, we've been serious about building institutions, and not only building institutions, but making sure they work. And we have also put laws in place that govern our country. So our country is a country of laws, and these institutions ensure that the laws are respected and everybody is behind it. It's the understanding of Rwanda.
How do you prevent the bribery of customs officials and police, and it's that petty bribery that doesn't allow some institutions to be built?
It's a combination of issues. It's education, it's understanding how dangerous corruption is to the economy and the lives of people. It's also making sure that there are incentives in terms of responsibilities people have in execution of their daily work, and it's also making sure that everybody understands that we all are going to be held accountable.
And you've thrown people in jail. I mean, people have been jailed for corruption.
Well, the judiciary does that.
Yeah.
They are supposed to make sure that laws are respected. There are institutions that are responsible for that. And all institutions in their respective responsibilities make sure that we respect what we are there to do.
What happened in Rwanda was probably one of the worst things that humanity has seen in a very long time. You know, Africa has remarkable growth. It's a place of opportunity for investors over the next few years. But then we see, and you've probably seen this new UN report, that over 300 civilians were raped in the Congo this summer. What do we need to know about stability in Africa and governance so that things like this stop happening? And I think Rwanda is a great example to use because you've come through such horror that you must have learned things. Is stability spreading through Africa, or do we still have to face things like this?
I think stability is spreading in most parts of Africa, not in all. We still have pockets of instability and insecurity, and in fact, places where there is failed state or countries are close to being failed states.
Right.
We still have those, but the majority of Africa is seeing this progress in terms of stability, in terms of governance, in terms of economic development. So there are many good stories out there, but there are these other stories also that we need to focus on and work together on the continent to try and address that. So it all comes down to governance, to institutions, to leadership, and making sure that we understand what needs to be done and what our responsibilities are. Unfortunately, we don't find all this everywhere we go. But
when do you think Rwanda is going to be ready for full, conditionless democracy?
Well, it's a very difficult question. I think one needs to look at history, even of the countries that boast of stability and full-blown democracy. They have probably taken not decades, but hundreds of years to be there. So it would be, I think, unfair to just think that you would be there in a fortnight. But you need to be on the move, you need to be on the journey to being there, and that's where Rwanda is. If you look at what we have achieved in the last 16 years, there is no doubt that we should be there sooner rather than later.
President Kagame, good to see you again. Thank you for stopping by to talk to us.
Pleasure.
President Paul Kagame of Rwanda.